You probably read the title of this video and wondered what I mean by saying that Genshin Impact fails at everything that makes it great. But my idea here is quite simple. Genshin is a game that claims a lot of things about itself and what it does, and surprisingly accomplishes a lot of them. But the problem here is more essential. While it does everything it says it can do, it does them with absolutely no depth. Hello, welcome to the Dream Machine channel. I am your host Gabe, and today I want to talk about one of the core elements of good game design: depth. And I also want to reveal a game that came out recently and has been on top of the trends for some time now: Genshin Impact. What does it mean to talk about depth in a video game? Put simply, depth in a game refers to the structure of both gameplay elements and its narrative. Saying a game has a deep gameplay is to say it has a well-organized, well-developed structure composed of dynamic systems that interact with each other and allow room for style, mastery, and adaptation. It means the mechanics through which the player interacts with the world are layered, planned, elaborate, thought out as to incentivize or discourage certain acts inside the game. In the same vein, referring to a game's narrative as deep is saying it has layers, emotions, pacing, and is well planned to take the player on a journey, to make you go to the places they prepared or let you free to go wherever you want. A deep narrative is driven by emotional, realistic characters, by complete and well-established words, by compelling and entertaining narratives. If deep gameplay allows for the player to branch out and take control of the systems the game provides, deep narratives allow for the player to connect to that game, to be enticed by it, to be enamored by its charms. Contrary to popular belief, depth and complexity don't always walk together, and one does not necessarily imply the other. Let me give you an example to make it more clear. Rocket League and Ori and the Blind Forest are two titles that I have in high esteem. Rocket League, although not a game I play regularly, is very unique and a fun experience, enjoyable by anyone with a controller and access to the game. You don't have to be good at driving nor at football to be able to have fun with Rocket League, and even to be relatively good at it. It is a very easy game to pick up and play, but if you wish to become good at it, and I mean really good, you can, because the gameplay is deep enough that you're able to adapt it to your style, master its possibilities, and rise above the crowd. Similarly, Ori and the Blind Forest has one of the most endearing and at times disheartening narratives I have ever seen in an indie game, even with absolutely no dialogue from the player whatsoever. You watch as the story unfolds and you feel the emotions portrayed in its beautiful art and godly soundtrack. The game never stops you mid-session for a healthy dose of unwanted exposition dump, nor does it patronize you by explicitly telling what it subtly shows through its entirety. Oh, and the gameplay in it is really well designed and deep too. If you don't need complex gameplay or a convoluted story to have depth, why then does Genshin still fail at this? Because what Genshin does with its narrative and gameplay systems could be the definition of shallow. Because the combat is a rinse-repeat session of smashing buttons and evading attacks. Because there are many interesting mechanics that only ever appear once and have no connection to the rest of the game. And because there are many recurrent mechanics that are just glorified traversal tools and add nothing to gameplay, exploration, strategy, or combat. Because the story is so predictable and cliché, it hurts, and you could skip over every single line of dialogue in this game and not miss anything, because everything going on your screen has been done before thousands of times. It fails at this because you can't just shamelessly copy one of the greatest games of this generation, plaster an anime filter over it, and call it a day. Think about this. If you were to copy every plot point from the Song of Ice and Fire almost one by one, making slight stylistic changes here and there, but keeping the main core of the text, how would you be able to turn it into rubbish? Simply by taking away the things that surround the plot and by stripping it of its main defining trace, its character. Song of Ice and Fire is a book saga full of character and soul, full of charm and style. If you take away the plot points and give them to a bad writer, however, the poor guy will not be able to recreate the series because he will not have what it takes to make those points matter. If we apply this example here, that's what MiHoYo did to Breath of the Wild's gameplay and open world. Copied the points of interest, threw away the things that made those matter. In Zelda, exploration matters on a level that very few games could ever dream to reach. Exploration in Breath of the Wild feels good, it is rewarding, it drives you forward. In Genshin, you have this enormous open world under the premise that you can explore everything, go anywhere, do whatever you want. But there is no meaning in doing any of that because you will be rewarded with a giant middle finger to your face and a common chest filled with nothing. Equally, in 2017's Game of the Year, combat is amazing, fun, but also allows for incredible variety and creativity with its elements. See how many insane stunts you can do in Zelda, or the sheer variety of enemy types and strategies for each of them. In Genshin, you have none of that. All you do is press buttons until the enemy dies. There is no creativity, there is no mastery, there is nothing. How did they screw it up? How can you have such a wonderful foundation for a game and not make a good final product? I'll tell you how. All you need is a profoundly conflicting set of systems in place, so intrinsically opposed and so naturally antagonistic to each other that the game can't help but break down. Because at the end of the day, that's what Genshin is. At its core, it is a game that hates itself. Let me explain. Genshin is a gacha game. That means that no matter how different it may be from its peers, it is still bound to the essence of what a gacha game is. A gambling game. A game of marketing. A game of sales. Every gacha game, from Fate Go to Arknights to whatever else, is literally just a front for a store where they sell randomized packs of characters and items. Just open the menu, it's there, and admittedly, Genshin is the least intrusive, least irritating of all gacha games by an immense margin. It is in a league of its own compared to any other gacha out there, which means in the general scale of things, it's about right here. And that is one of the reasons why I am so harsh against this game. The game has all of the elements of a good, light version of Zelda, but fails so miserably at making use of any of them. And it fails because of the gacha aspect. The thing is, gacha and open world adventure games don't mix well, and that's because of two big reasons. Firstly, the extrinsic motivation of exploration is taken away by the fact that the best rewards for your efforts are behind paywalls. Exploration, unlike building in a sandbox or making cool-looking executions in a stealth game, is uniquely extrinsically motivated. You don't explore just because it's fun. You explore because it is rewarding to do so, and the fun is in that cycle of risk and reward. You don't go mining in Minecraft to look cool. You go mining to find resources. But in Genshin, Exploration is static. It is vain, empty, and soulless. The best you can get is a rare chest filled with more XP boosts. That, by the way, are an awful way to level up characters, and it is baffling to me that they chose to implement it in a game like this. Every sword, bow, spear, claymore, and magical item that is worth half a piece of dried turd is basically locked behind poles, or you can get them so much earlier by buying poles that finding them by exploring becomes a bore, not a reward. Opening chests and pressing a button repeatedly to take up every piece of gear and material that drops out of it becomes a pain that you can't get rid of, like a little stone in your shoe during a hike. Meanwhile, they make sure that you feel extremely rewarded when you decide to buy a pole from the store, even going as far as to make sure you'll come back by giving you the fleeting chance of a 1 in 10 guaranteed 4 stars or above reward. It's scummy, unimaginative, and shows exactly why I hate gacha games. Secondly, by design of the gacha philosophy, you want to churn out as many new characters as possible to keep selling boxes. So making interesting, more than one-dimensional characters is a secondary priority that by my explorations of the game has not yet been put to service. Go ahead, try to find a single interesting character in this game. I dare you. By consequence, forget anything about having fun with the story. It is drier than bread left out for a week, and even water has more taste than this. Any good story needs good characters, even the ones that are not character-driven. Characters are the vessel in which we set sail to navigate through the world, and in Genshin, you are set up for one long, monotonous trip. Take for example the Bard, who is a god, but his only personality trait is being a prick to everyone that meets him, and never explaining himself clearly enough to avoid misunderstandings. Imagine my shock when his reaction to a very important object of his being stolen by another god was not much more than a "Welp, that's that, I guess. By the way, player, can you get that back for me? Big thanks." Or the captain of the Knights of Favonius, Kaya, a full-grown adult who acts like a 5th grade edgelord. His character design screams authority and combat experience, doesn't it? Spoiler, it doesn't. The story is divided into acts. By the time of writing this, only the prologue and Act 1 are available to play. I finished the prologue and did some of Act 1 before finally settling on my opinion of this game, which is thus: good looking at best, empty and underwhelming if I'm being fully honest. No amount of makeup in the world ever made a wicked woman a saint, because if you're rotten inside, you're rotten, period. And that's what this game is to me. It pains me profoundly to see this game being praised for the things that it does wrong, and I refuse to even accept the fact that it was nominated for the category of Best RPG by the Game Awards. There is not a soul on heaven or earth that can convince me that Genshin is an RPG by any measure, angle, or delusion. Genshin Impact thus becomes a mere reflection of the reality more present around us each passing day. That the things that make greatness are secondary to flashiness and profitability. That you can take the painstaking work of talented artists, programmers, writers, designers, and throw it all away for mediocrity. The gacha culture, just like the microtransactions here in the West, has become a cancerous tendency that is easy to follow and very tempting, and turns what could be one of the best mobile games ever made for the years to come into a soulless, monotone, stale experience that leaves not many lasting impressions on me besides the foul taste of disappointment, and is bound to be forgotten in the future unless it forsakes its sins and fully embraces the open world action-adventure fantasy power and the responsibilities that come with it. This is why Genshin fails at everything that would make it great. This was Gabe, your host for the Dream Machine channel. Thanks for watching.